Anderson, the COO of Future in Review, and I'm here today with Mark Anderson, who wears very many hats, but for this session, the best context, I guess, would be Future in Review chair. And we are going to spend our first few minutes together today talking about from crisis to opportunity, seeing the turn. So this theme came about because we spent a lot of time talking about what should we bring to FIRE this year? What does the world need to see? And at the time, and I think still today, that we had this conversation, there's a lot of negativity in the world. There's a lot of online kind of echo chamber despair and frustration and anger, which is, it justified certainly in many instances. However, if we want to create a better world, we have to think not like that, right? We have to think about what are the opportunities here? How do we take advantage of this historical moment? Mm-hmm. And how do we bring people together in a way that is optimistic and that is inspiring, and not just to be optimistic, but that is based in reality, right? So that's what we're going to talk about this morning.
I hope so.
I think.
All right. May I add something?
Yeah, absolutely.
Berit and I have talked about this a lot, and Berit, as you probably know, is one of her hats is misinformation during elections and all that kind of stuff. I have gotten to the point in this conversation with you, which I think you know, where I am so convinced, put this a better way, I have become convinced that the presence of the internets is completely destructive in society, and that it harms us. Now, there are many good things. You can see your mom on Facebook, but in terms of what Russia and China and others are doing, probably, I saw a number yesterday, I think it was like 20% of the accounts on Meta are fake, are bots. Well, a bot can do 10 million messages a day. So it's like, that's not just a number of accounts.
Yeah, and it only takes about 12 of them to make a really negative impact on people's perspective of what's going on in the world.
Right, and so you take this ad software that tries to find out what makes you angry, so you'll stay on longer. I think it's really bad for society, really bad. I think it makes us all crazy. And we don't know it. We think we're watching the news. We're only watching the news we get fed that makes us so angry, we can't stand it, and then we want to go out and do something about it. And it's the wrong stuff. It's misinformation.
So what is the right stuff? Part of the reason the session came along is we started having this conversation about, actually there are a lot of interesting opportunities going on right now.
Yes.
And this feeling of despair that you feel constantly when you look on any social network, basically, doesn't actually portray a lot of the positive trends that are taking place in the world.
I think we're going to see business opportunities of the opposite type. So in a perverse way, even Elon's doing his own, what he wants to see at X. Mm-hmm. And I think we already are seeing new social networks for what other entrepreneurs want to see as a social network. And I would be very surprised if these are the opposite of what Mr. T has been doing with his social network. My guess is it'll be more positive. It'll be more focused on a certain kind of thing, whether it's romantic or whether it's business, whatever it is. You'll feel better when you use it instead of feeling worse when you use it, and you'll feel productive. So I think they'll be selling productivity, not negativity. And they probably won't be ad-supported, they'll probably be subscriber-supported. So they don't have to go and make you mad all the time.
We actually have a breakout session later today focused on building a pro-social social network with the heads of Stanford's Brainstorm Innovation Lab. So if you're interested in that, we'll have an opportunity to talk more about that later.
Exactly.
The other thing that I think that I grew up coming to FIRE, as I think you know.
I noticed that.
So one of the benefits of that is that I very early on was like, oh, this climate change stuff is screwed up. Why isn't anyone doing anything? So I've spent a lot of time thinking about my life goal is to reverse climate change. And it's a very audacious goal, but it has to be audacious in order to achieve like halfway, right? So One of the things that I'm very excited about, we talked about a little bit last night, is energy. I think the energy space is a huge opportunity. There's going to be a huge amount of money made. There's a huge potential for innovation. We are using this electrical system around the world that has not been improved upon, really, since it was created. And we're finally beginning to apply that technological and innovation lens to energy. And energy is the underpinning of about 75% of total US emissions, which is the second largest emitter in the world. So I think it's a huge opportunity. We're going to see, and the government funding is there, the policy is there right now. Hopefully it continues. I think it's like one of the most exciting opportunities
I do too.
in tech right now.
I thought Dennis did a great job elaborating on the profit angle of this. You know, it's a funny thing because Dennis is a government person. He's a NASA guy, chief scientist. And here he's just drumming the table hard. It's got to be profitable. It's got to be profitable. Don't go to the government. You know, it's like make it so that if it's the cheapest and the best, it'll be fine, basically. So I think he's right. You know, that's the part of the business angle that has to be there. And the good news is that that is true for solar. So, you know, last night we're pushing pretty hard on solar. And I'm still today doing that again in half an hour.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that there's an awful large opportunity in that entire ecosystem. One of the points I was trying to make last night was support the whole supply chain because there's so much there. Right. And, you know, you're an expert on rebuilding the grid. That's a lot. And we have people who are experts on solar cell design. You know, every part of this can use more help.
One of the biggest, I mean, maybe not the biggest opportunity, but one of the areas that most needs help and innovation, I feel like, is just the basics of manufacturing and supply chain stuff, right? Like, that's some of the biggest challenges beyond utilities are in the manufacture and supply of enough materials and enough, you know. Right. So that's a big opportunity, is if you can advance that, improve that process.
That's right. So move from lithium batteries probably to iron batteries, probably, or flow batteries like Simon's working on. And then I think, you know, Dennis mentioned this, Pat and we've worked on this. It looks to me like Dennis is right, that you could improve the efficiency of solar cells in general by at least, he was saying 2 to 3, I would say at least 2 times. So it's around in the high 20s now, go up to 48%. That would have mammoth impact on everything else we're talking about, because you have, you know, half the cost, half as many, or however you want to do it. So these large step function changes in battery capacity, battery cost, decentralizing the grid, and then making much more efficient solar panels. There's a company in Australia has this really cute animation. It was called Sun Cable, now it's called B5, I think. And they make all the panels in a factory. They wire them ahead of time. They hinge them into collapsing, you know, fenestrations. They have a special pickup truck with little things on it, and they drive the truck, and it just goes pop, 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 you know, for like 100 yards, and you've got a whole field of properly inclined solar cells, pre-wired, plug it in. Yeah, so they're doing massive deployments in Australia, and then they're running the power to Singapore. Whew, that's interesting. So how'd you do that? It's DC current. And 1/3 of Singapore's power will come from Australia by the sun. And so you kind of have to rejigger your idea that it's a local solution. Right. Maybe it's both local and global. But things like that are so impactful, and they're not that complicated. Right. You gotta have a pickup truck. You know, I mean,
well, they're very complicated, but it's all about, like, the other I think end of the equation that Dennis didn't mention last night. Price is clearly a huge one, but the other one is ease of use, right? Like design, and is it easy to install? Is it easy to use?
Yes.
That can be can kill technologies instantly.
So we've got some folks here who are applying solar by essentially adhesive instead of putting nails in your roof, or by tile. Yeah. And so that's great. I mean, people would rather not have nail holes in the roof. And it turns out...
Well, no, they're actually nailable. You're talking about GAF energy?
That's one of them, but...
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah. So, but I think, you know, making it easy. I've got Starlink, and that was really well designed because there are no nails in the roof. It just uses heavy lead, you know. And just
I installed that Starlink on your roof for you, yeah. It was very easy.
You know how easy it was. They even thought about you going up the ladder, and it's like...
They gave you a special bag to carry your Starlink up the ladder.
So, that kind of design is really important if you want to have global acceptance.
So let's talk about, let's switch gears for a second and talk about something that I know is very near and dear to your heart, which is advanced artificial intelligence. Can you give, for our audience, kind of an overview of where you think things are now? Mm-hmm. There's a lot of hype around generative AI.
Mm-hmm. Not a fan. And what I mean by that is, you saw the presidential order last week, came out. You saw a lot of conversation before that in Europe and Congress here about what to do, all the backdoor meetings and backroom meetings. That technology was invented by Google a long time ago. It's been through Rev 1, Rev 2, Rev 3, Rev 3.5, Rev 4, Rev 4.5, and they didn't release it. Well, why was that? Because it kills people. If you used it in the wrong life or death situation,
so like if you
it would
used it
hallucinate.
In a medical context.
It makes stuff up. The word the president used, which is the right word, is accountability. And David Brin's here, he mentioned that I've used that word, and he liked that. It was like, that we have laws about accountability already. If you leave a loaded gun on a kid's table in a lunchroom, you're going to pay for that. So that's what they did. And I don't understand which genius it was that decided it was okay to make money shipping that crap. But somebody did. I think I know who it was. And then you have Sam Altman coming out, who's OpenAI, saying, yeah, but you would never use this for anything important. But I do want a 90 billion price tag on my company, right? So that's what's happening, is you've got greed and just greed, let's say, overwhelming any sense of ethics that should have, again, version 1, version 2, version 3 were not safe, still not safe, but they all released. Microsoft pays $13 billion to get into the poker game. Microsoft says they're going to use it in medicine. And they go, well, no, we're not. But yes, we are, but no, we're not. Better not. Or if you're doing it, I don't know what. Everyone's saying, well, it can summarize doctors' comments. There was a report out 2 days ago, a new company called Verta, looking at all the hallucination rates for all the big guys. And you can read it. And they were like between 3% and 25% making stuff up. And this whole idea that you can find a safe way through guardrails, no. Another paper out of Berkeley, you can't. Well, how about, we'll just train it on our own data, which is really safe data. No, because it still hallucinates. And so these guys gave these Meta and Microsoft, they said 3 sentences of facts, just 3 sentences. And then it said, please summarize. Now you mentioned the doctor's notes, Berit has just gotten shot with an arrow, it's sticking out the other ear, what do I do? And it's like, okay, summarize this patient's history or whatever. And in just 3 sentences, it started making stuff up. So it would be like, John bought 5 apples, and it would say, for a cost of $50,000. Where'd that come from? It wasn't in the data. It was amazing how often and how much was made up. Why would you ever release that? I don't understand. So my feeling is the Valley is very good at pumping stuff up. The VCs who invest in these things help, and they really want to make money, and they really want to pump this up. Everyone's so excited. But, we like talking to machines. They talk back. Cute. It's like a parlor trick in a way. And if you can't tell the difference between good and evil or true or false, and if it's literally impossible, which is what we're being told right now, what do you do with that technology? And the smartest thing I've heard, which is really unfortunate, is you just hire a person to review every single thing that is output from GPT,
right,
and then you'll be okay. And you might want to go, why bother? Just hire the people and do the work. So it's a bit goofy to me. That the cost savings, if you really have to do that, are considerable, but not what they claim. So there's a problem there, and I think the real answer is going to be get beyond it. I don't see any solution right now. And so there will be everyone saying that they've got a better than the other guys, but no guarantees here. And you wouldn't ship software if you knew it failed 10% of the time or 25% of the time.
So the thing, I know that there are a lot of other people out there who also have concerns about generative AI and its applications and its uses. The problem is that regardless of your concerns, it's out there.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
It is driving the economy at the moment. how, based on what you see, how do you think that will play out over time? We've got this hype cycle now. Will the hype cycle continue? Will there be a backlash? Will we leapfrog to
we already have backlash
to the next stage of machine learning, where things we don't have that problem?
Yeah.
And all of these technologies that are being developed will just switch to a new application?
A new technology.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, either somebody clever will find a way to fix them from outside, not from inside, and then everything will get revved back up, or someone will come up with something that's just better. I happen to think Pattern did that already, but there are a lot of companies out there, and then people just finally just exhausted, give up on trying to fix very dangerous software and buy the other thing. So there's already a backlash. You can see it in venture funding. Venture funding is way down from back in March, even in this area. It's still the best area if you're a startup to be in, but it's way down. And it's not hard to imagine why. Most of the complaints are it couldn't find a business case. There was no actual place where it's safe to play with this stuff. So what's the business case? Oh, autonomy driving. No, let's not do that.
Yeah, that's a...
Oh, how about operating room? No, not operating room.
Yeah.
So I think that we're already in the middle of what you're saying. It's happening now. Yeah.
I think that, the space that I've seen it have the most impact and the most use is actually in marketing, right? Marketing and content creation.
Yes.
Although I've also seen people say things like, all my friends who are using ChatGPT to write your posts and stuff, like, please know that I have lost so much respect for you, and I can always tell, and I'll never, I don't want to follow you anymore online. Yeah. So I think there is this really interesting thing happening as well, where humans are naturally even already starting to recognize that kind of communication, and it adds a lot of value to real communication, right? It adds a lot of value to real connection. And actually human-written things in some ways.
Yes, that's right.
And so the opportunities, I think, in media to combine the benefits of GPT with content, maybe like grafting almost, if you will, and then to apply a human layer on top of that, there's some potential uses.
That's the hope people have.
But let's talk about medicine, because the medical space is one place where artificial intelligence, maybe not generative AI, but artificial intelligence is having a huge impact. What do you see going on there?
It looks to me, now I'm biased, but it looks to me that if you took the entire, well, let's do it this way. If you took the whole history of medicine at this moment, because of what you're mentioning, is at the greatest pivot point in history. More change per day, more change per everything. It's amazing. So it was, I would call it backward before. Everyone was trying hard, but frankly, standard of care is the most frightening term I know of in the dictionary. So evidence-based medicine is a pretty wild idea. So yeah, it should be a little more than evidence-based. It ought to work, and the outcomes ought to matter more. And I think we're just getting to that now. So if you did a timeline, you'd probably say data-driven medicine, 2023. Mm-hmm. Oh, good. That's good, So that will make a huge pivot in medicine. If you look at AI, go all the way back to Marvin Minsky or something, MIT, go back to the 60s, they shouldn't ever have been called neural networks because they're not like nerves, but you could call it filters or stacks or something. And you go all the way from the 60s to 2023, and then you see this pivot. And the pivot is happening in not just in GPT, but in a lot of things, where suddenly everyone believes AI is the deal. And it may not be quite there yet. Maybe they're not getting what they want yet, but they are pretty, I would say, CEO chiefs are not quite as much in agreement yet. But all their data people are. So they kind of know, if you're a CIO, you know that AI is coming. You better be working on it now. You better have an answer for the board when they ask what you're doing. And the shareholders are going to get mad if you don't have something. So that's all happening right now. So you've had the biggest pivot in computing, probably in technical terms, happening at the same time as that's happening in medicine. And then you put them together because you've got most funding in those two areas, and you cross them. And that point of the spear is an amazing place to be. because it's important. You can save lives. You really can this time. People have been talking about that for a long time, but not so good, but getting there, where you really can change clinical outcomes. You really have drugs that work. 2 years ago, the rumor was AI, meaning neural networks, have never created a drug. I think that's true. You know, it's like a lot of activity, but not a lot of result. But now if we get beyond neural networks, which have a black box problem, into what we call the glass box, where you have explainability, you understand what the system is doing, because you understand it, you learn from it, and that learning allows you to go much faster in improving the drugs or the treatments. That's where we are. And the more of that, the better. So it's not hard to imagine why the funding is there, that it will continue to be there, and that if we get beyond this ethical mistake of GPT, the road's wide open. You know, we're going to have compute systems that are amazing, much more amazing than GPT. And we're going to have solutions in medicine that are wonderful, much more wonderful than evidence-based or standard of care. And it'll be fantastic. Just if you're looking for business opportunities, I think that's the most vital place you could go.
And tied into this kind of artificial intelligence boom are chips, closely
Yep.
tied in. You know, we've seen NVIDIA take off even more than anyone ever thought humanly possible this year.
Mm-hmm.
We're seeing AMD have a very
Yep.
large growth. There's a lot of investment going into the United States to create fabs here.
Yep. CHIPS Act.
How do you see, I mean, we still probably have a couple of years. Samsung's fab is coming online next year.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the first US fab, really, that, are we going to be able to move fast enough on chips to avoid also bringing in that, speaking of systems, right, the China-US conflict there? And you know, we've got a session later today on the future of Taiwan, which is closely tied into all of this. What do you see playing out in that space?
I think that TSMC, which is the Taiwan story, realizes they have to move somewhere else. They're not going to really move, but they're spending probably more than anybody else at making more fabs around the world. Mm-hmm. Because if they stay in Taiwan, no one's going to, you know, sorry. The risk of attack is too high. The risk of something bad happening is too high. And all the arguments that TSMC had in the beginning of time, when they started out, are working against them now. Why would you send your IP to Taiwan? Before it was like, everyone should do it, you know? It'll be great. And then they got to learn from everybody's IP. Wow, that's a good deal, you know? And then we lost track of our own IP. Well, oops. But now, it's the opposite. No one would do that. So, as fast as TSMC can, they're building in Europe, they're building in Arizona, and that's smart because they're going to lose everything if they don't do that.
Yeah.
And so the amount of change in the chip industry is radical. It's really radical, all because of the Taiwan problem. It's probably a good thing not to have put everything into one basket, but now we're decentralizing. And it'll take a little while. Since I'm an optimist, I don't get depressed about this. I think it's really good we're doing this, and a lot of money being spent.
Yeah.
And it's always been the case that either the U.S. or someplace in Europe were the world leaders in the actual IP. So the fact that we shipped it to Taiwan was a business decision. Well, we can get that back. So I'm not worried about it. I think it's great. You may remember, do we have anyone here who was at FIRE the year that we had Jensen Huang here on stage? All right, so you will remember, I hope, we just looked at the video of this like last week. I'm sitting here, Jensen's there, and he's making game chips, right? GPUs. And I go, you know, we've been writing about this XY computing idea for a while, Jensen. What do you think if you took your thing, you stood it up on its side, and ran it like a CPU? And he goes, well, Mark, we've been talking about that too. We have it all on video. And now, of course,
that's all they do.
Whoa, that's it, yeah. So can't claim that we gave him the idea, but we certainly polished it for him on an apple somewhere, and he liked it, yeah.
Yeah, and we have a couple of sessions on chips today and tomorrow.
Yes.
So those are going to be really fascinating. I think the next iteration of innovation in the chip space Let's talk a little bit about some of the kind of like bigger picture global issues, because all of these are opportunities and they're going to be playing out in the next couple of years. There's also in the background this rising trend of insecurity and instability, which you and I have talked about. Climate destruction, climate emergency, global migration is going to increase. We're going to see a lot more food insecurity and food instability. These are all big challenges that we as a global society are going to have to overcome in the next couple of years. How do we think about, how will those things affect the trends that we've already talked about? Like, how do you build a company in the midst of all of that? There's so many kind of interlocking questions there, and a lot of I think unknowns there for people, where there's this general fear of growing inequality, global migration, increasing food instability, rising prices, that's already happening, inflation. I guess just my question for you is, do you see any kind of positive there? Like, do you see sometimes in the moments of greatest challenge are the times when people really come together and there's great opportunity? And I'm just curious if you can.
I'd love to say yes, but not with the subjects you're mentioning. So I think you're touching on migration is underappreciated right now, even though everyone's upset about it worldwide, compared to the damage it can do. So I don't think any country in the world is ready for what's happening already, much less tomorrow. And they don't know what to do. They don't know how to control it. It's all illegal, or whatever fairy tale words you want to make up. It's against the law, but it's happening anyway.
Yeah.
And the people who live in these countries, every country who's an established nation with real borders and a decent economy, don't know what to do. And even Sweden, it's a pretty liberal place, shut the damn door. And it's really interesting. So you can't blame anybody. It's like we don't have enough social whatever to pay for all the services that are now going to be needed. I think it's also a falsehood that the people who are migrating as a 100% class, not all of them, are seeking asylum. That's not true.
Oh, there are a lot of wealthy people migrating as well.
Thank you. So my worry is...
Look at Portugal.
Yeah. So my worry is that primarily this is an economic migration. If you look at your TV set and you see that Germany is a better place to live than where you live, why not? Off you go. Take your kids. And, it makes sense from a human being perspective. But when you say, well, let's just suggest that 1 billion people will do that, that's a lot. It's a really big problem. And what we see then is that the governments become right-wing governments. And they're mostly using the campaign plank of fear of migration in Germany and all over the place. So in America, Trump, build the wall. So it's just universal, really, among established countries that this is happening. And it's not, I don't feel good about it. I think we need to figure it out, go back to rule of law somehow. Borders really are borders. They really do matter for many, many reasons. And if we get that sorted, the sooner the better, and then we can actually have beneficial conversations. Maybe we should allow 4 times more people than we had before, but not infinite.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be great if we do that.
Maybe we don't have any topics on that at FIRE this year,
No.
but this is giving me some ideas for next year.
Because we're working on next year already.
We're working on next year already.
Yeah, right.
All right, we only have about 30 seconds left. Is there anything that we haven't touched on that you want this group of wonderful people here with us today?
Well, there are 2 things, but I think maybe we should just pop okay. No, I think we've done a good job. We have 13 seconds left. I think we covered a lot of territory, and I hope that for those of you who were there last night, I hope you enjoyed it. I sure did. And we're very serious about the CTO challenge on this question of global solar, and we'll be doing that in half an hour. So see everybody back here then.
See you then. Thank you very much.
All right.